Nothing is impossible.
Hello, welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Brandstetter, founder and podcast producer at Max Podcasting. And you can email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 261, and today's guest is Karim Khalil. Karim is the founder of Yaza, or Yaza Foods, the delicious line of Labneh, the Mediterranean-style dip, which is delicious. There's no other way to describe it. In this episode, we talk Karim's journey from growing up with Labneh to seeing a white space opportunity in the U.S., bringing it to the U.S., his early experience getting it into doors or stores, however you prefer to say that, depending on how much of a CPGer you are. How him and the team, or he and the team, I'm not sure the right one for that, are growing the brand and growing the options and flavors they have, and how he achieves fantastic work-life balance, and his thoughts on entrepreneurship and community in the U.S. It is Karim. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Karim Khalil, founder of Yaza, one of my favorite new food dip spread brands, however you want to say it. Labneh, shaking up the world and bringing it to the U.S. Karim, so great to... we literally just met in person, but now to speak remotely over the podcast interview as well. Thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
Great, Max. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. And really excited to be here as well. I can't believe they let me on this podcast still. No, but really excited to dive into the Yaza story. Really just awesome, super tasty. My wife Dana and I have taste tested it and confirm how delicious it is. But before we get into that, so you have some experience with family business. Can you shed some light on that chapter of your life?
My family used to be big in Africa, based in Nigeria in hair extension. And my father founded in the 80s a hair extension company factory out of Nigeria. And he started literally with 5 employees out of his house. And him and my mom used to drive around the country, hair products in the boot of their car, drive around from city to city, try to sell it. And they grew the company from 5 employees to 7,000 employees. So I joined that company. My father was sick around 2011. And I joined the company, took it over, was able to grow the company, and we sold it in 2014.
Holy cow. So there's a lot to literally unpack there from the boot of the car. But that's an incredible and an inspiring and heartwarming story. How did your family get into the hair extensions niche of Nigeria in the first place?
So my father, used to be a judge. He was the youngest judge in the history of Lebanon. And then the civil war broke out in Lebanon. He had to leave. He moved to London, and then from there he moved to France, and then eventually he moved to Switzerland, where he was a banker. And part of his work at the bank was traveling around Africa, meeting his clients. And over there he saw the opportunity. He decided to quit everything and start from scratch. He moved us. I was born at the time. We moved there for a few years, and then he started the business, and then he had us move to Paris, and he would travel back and forth because he wanted the better life for us. So he was based in Nigeria, founded the company, and then we were based in France, and he would go back and forth every couple of weeks.
What was it about hair extensions in particular that caught his attention?
So it was very new. They were the pioneers at the time. Hair extension business in Africa became very big. And when he started the business in the 80s, it was still a small business. He was the first one to start it off over there. They still used to wear dreadlocks and not hair extension, not weaves, not braids. So they started that. Him and his brother and other members of his family, each one took a different country, and they grew that business from one country, in Nigeria, to around 20 countries across Africa. We had 7,000 employees in Nigeria, but we had 25,000 across the whole group.
Holy cow. So multiple countries, thousands and thousands of employees. I think for any entrepreneur, it's like exciting to think about, and hopefully one day you can, build out your team. For many, that's like, all right, just getting your first employer, getting your first few employees, which is a tongue twister. But 7,000 employees, I mean, and more in different countries. What tips did you learn from your parents about scaling, building out your team at such a crazy scale like that?
I was running Nigeria, which had 7,000 employees. I was very young. I was 21 years of age. I had so much responsibility, but that was the best school for me. That was, the biggest challenge. We faced a lot of issues, a lot of competition. The business environment in Nigeria is not very easy to work in. It's not, there's a lot of corruption, a lot of tough competition. So it was very challenging. And my father wasn't able to be next to me most of the time because he was going through cancer. So it was great for me to build the team. What I was able to do when I moved there, we had 7,000 employees, but we had one person in sales, no person in marketing, literally no one in the office. It was everyone in the factory. And we just used to produce and sell. When we sold the company, our sales and marketing team was over 200 people. What we were able to do is kind of create a brand. So we had a very strong brand, but we had to create the brand value, and that asset is what we were able to achieve in the few years I was at the company.
How did you navigate, like that's an incredibly emotional time with your father. And then there's all this, crazy, like big explosive growth business that you're managing as well and getting more into. How did you tackle just kind of like the day to day in that time?
The biggest challenge I would say was kind of understanding the consumer. That's the most important. That's the biggest mistake a lot of entrepreneurs do. They don't understand their consumers. They put themselves in the shoes of the consumer. And for the hair extension business, I had no option. I had to understand the consumer because it's not a product I can consume even if I wanted to. So that was the biggest challenge on day to day. Understand the consumer, see what they want, and how to build that brand, how to grow that brand, and how to fix the problems of the consumer. That learning I was able to bring into Yaza.
Let's get to Yaza. For full context here, very early days of going to market in Yaza and very early days of hitting the shelves. And so, we interview a wide range of entrepreneurs on the show. Some have been around for, decades on decades, and some are just getting into stores. And so you're more of the latter case, but I can tell from taste testing and your branding how awesome of a brand and product it is. So really, really promising start here. For anybody who's not familiar, what is Labneh?
So Labneh, by definition, is a strain yogurt. But the way I would explain it to someone who doesn't know what Labneh is kind of if Greek yogurt and cream cheese had a baby, that's what Labneh is. So Labneh is a savory Greek yogurt. It's more strained, so it has more health benefits.
What's the difference between some of these other dips and spreads out there, health benefit wise?
So Labneh has less calories. We have per serving, which is around 2 tablespoons. We're at 30 calories versus a cream cheese would go between 80 and 110 calories. Protein wise, we are 3 gram protein compared to a 1 or 2 gram protein. Fat wise, we're at 1.5 grams versus a 5, 6, 10 grams, depending on what cream cheese you buy. At the same time, we do have probiotics similar to the Greek yogurt. And because it's savory, it's not sweet, you don't have to add any sugar to the Labneh for it to taste good. So it's very good for you. It's what me as someone from Lebanon grew up eating every single day of my life.
Can you add some color to that?
So Labneh is the first thing you would find in anyone's fridge. What doesn't matter their social level. It's like the basic thing you need to have in your fridge. You need to have Labneh and bread and pita bread. These are the two basics of any households. So we have it, that's our go-to breakfast. It's our go-to dinner as well. But we also have it, as a dip, snacking or breakfast time for dip. Or we have it, we marinate our food with it. We marinate chicken with it. We put it as a side next to rice with, vegetables. It is used, it's a very versatile product that is always on anyone's table when you show up to their house. It's like having salt and pepper.
When did you start to think about introducing Labneh into the U.S. as the product you're solely focused on?
I was living in Lebanon. and I always wanted to move to the US. I always had this big dream, the American dream, to get a better life. I think the US is the best country in the world. It's also the biggest economy. I wanted a better life for my children. I always wanted to go into foods. I was looking at different foods, and I was traveling a lot back and forth to the US. And I've kind of felt that opportunity. It was middle of the pandemic. There was a big explosion. My apartment got destroyed. We just, took the plane and left, landed in Atlanta with my family, and I started looking at Labneh and kind of understanding the market. I took my time because of COVID, and things were kind of hard to meet people and talk to people and understand how things work. February of last year is when I decided I need to start with Labneh.
Was this, yeah, you mentioned a big explosion. Was this that giant chemical explosion that was like shook the world basically?
Exactly.
Oh my God. Can you, we don't need to dive too much into that, but what was your reaction when you, like, did you hear it? Did you feel it? Like, what was that like?
Luckily, I had traveled the day before. If I was home, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now.
Jesus.
So nothing
Wow.
was left from my apartment, completely destroyed. I came back, packed my stuff, spent one night in Lebanon, just left. I didn't want to take any more risk for my family. It's not worth it.
Oh my God. I mean, talk about life changing. So thankfully you were traveling then, and it's amazing to see already in just a few years here how you had the idea to move to the US, and now it's not only are you here, but you're launching a business and like getting into stores and contributing to the economy, and so it's just inspiring story all around. On the Yaza note, so how did you start to piece this brand together from an aesthetic standpoint?
So initially, what I wanted to introduce Labneh to the market, and Labneh back in Lebanon is only plain. You will only find it plain in grocery stores, except if you go to like very high specialty stores where they kind of make their own blends to sell it to you, but mostly it's plain. And I looked at the market here. Labneh wasn't big enough, in my opinion. You know, it's only currently sold in ethnic stores before Yaza came on board. It is in a few mainstream market, but it's directed for the ethnic consumer. And I kind of asked my question, why? I looked at the landscape of Labneh here, and all the Labneh that I have found was not real Labneh. It's at least it's not the Labneh I grew up eating. So I decided I wanted to make the real Labneh. I didn't know anything about food. I'm an entrepreneur. I have experience in production. I have experience in running a business, but I had no experience in food. So I kind of had to look for the best partner for that. And I found a gentleman called Ronald Marks, who used to run and own his own Greek yogurt company out of Atlanta. So he joined on board April 2022, and he's a dairy expert. We had to smuggle in Labneh from Lebanon. Every time, family member would show up or friend would come from Lebanon, we would smuggle that in a cooler, send it to labs, kind of have him taste it, kind of understand how to, how it works, how to make it. We partnered up with a few food scientists back in Lebanon because we wanted to get the real Labneh to the market.
How much testing, or rather taste testing, was there in those early days to make sure that you got these flavors right?
So it took us over 6 months to make a kitchen sample. So the first 6 months we're making a kitchen sample, and then after that once we had our gold standard, we did a consumer research. So we had a few hundred people out of a warehouse in Atlanta. That's what they do for you get in qualitative feedback from people, have them try our product versus the market. We've had over 90% prefer our product, and that was still the kitchen gold standard. So we realized at that point we had something. Now the other challenge we had to do is take it from the kitchen to a factory, and that took quite some time to convince someone to listen to us. We were looking for a co-packer that would take the risk. It's a startup company. It was a big challenge. I spent a month. I had a list of a few thousand co-packers in the country. I would spend the whole day calling co-packer after co-packer. And finally, someone in upstate New York finally answered the phone and gave us an appointment. We flew there in December of last year. We kind of explained to them they didn't know anything about Labneh. Trying explaining to them what Labneh is, and we didn't even know how to make it in a factory. We had an idea, but we never tried it. So we kind of did that from December to March, and in March we got closer to a prototype. And then we did it in their lab. The other challenge was to scale it up. And that's something we had, in June was our first production run. We did that. I tried the product. I threw it away. It wasn't up to standards to what I wanted to do. So we had orders in the market. We had to delay that. But that's a hit we took. It's better to have product you throw away at the warehouse level rather than having it in the market and people not getting it 100%. So it's not until beginning of August that we were able to get the perfect product that matches the gold standard that we feel values, gives the value of Yaza.
You didn't know your full-time job would be deciding when to throw away your own product, did you? How did you come up with at the time of this recording, there's 3 flavors that you're rolling out with. Really, really good stuff and a wide variety of flavors. But can you walk us through how you decided on this offering of 3?
We wanted to do flavors. That's something that no one had done, at least in the US. We wanted to create flavors for the market because we know that, you know, American consumer has less time. He wants something on the go, something easy, ready to go. So we created flavors for him. And the idea is not only 3 flavors, eventually we have more flavors coming out. But za'atar and olive oil, which is currently our best seller, is the most authentic way of eating Labneh. An average person from Lebanon would add za'atar and olive oil to their Labneh. Maybe, a few vegetables, tomatoes, cucumber, maybe some mint, and either wrap a sandwich or dip it. So za'atar and olive oil being the most authentic way of eating it, that was our number 1 flavor. Spicy chili being a more American way of eating it. That's a flavor the American consumer knows, but at the same time we're using Aleppo spices from Syria, from the region, which is kind of, keeping it authentic while satisfying the American palate. We did that. We also had 6 flavors during our consumer research, and those are the top 3 that people liked. So we started with those flavors for now.
And the other one that we've been alluded to is the plain or the original. Dana and I loved all of them. They were all good. I think somehow you hit the nail on the head with the American consumer because we gravitated to the spicy chili. There's just something about spicy chili that, or a little bit of kick that brings it over the top. But they were all good, and I think it's a really great balance of 3 different ones to start with because they all have a little bit of a different flavor or flavor notes to it.
So we've let the consumer decide how they want to eat it. We've seen a lot of creativity from consumers. People are marinating the spicy chili. They're marinating chicken and then grilling it on the barbecue. And they're sending us pictures. People are loving that. We have people marinating the za'atar. If you ask me, my favorite is the plain because I've grown up eating the plain all my life. And I know how to kind of deal with it and what to add to it. We typically add olive oil. That's a go-to. It's the first thing you add to it. And then you can add either za'atar or tomatoes or different things. Some people add fruits to it. It depends what you like. So the plain gives more versatility for a consumer to add what they like. The flavors is more ready to go. You open the spicy chili, you get in Doritos chips or any other chips, you just dip it in, or Stacy chips, and you have it out of the tub. It's so easy. It's a good lunch. We have people in the office here, different company, they have Yaza Fridays. So every Friday they buy Yaza Labneh, and there's 3 of them. One's favorite is the spicy, the other is the za'atar, and the third one's the plain. So it's kind of a good balance.
And shout out Stacy Madison, Stacy's Pita Chips, as you alluded to, who, as you know, has been on the podcast before. And when we first tried Yaza, we used Stacy's Pita Chips, and I think it's like the perfect 1-2 punch. You mentioned that one of the biggest challenges was going from kitchen to factory. But it doesn't just stop there, of course. You have to actually sell it into retailers. And this was really cool. This is how we actually connected in the first place. Shout out your PR team who somehow found me, tracked me down, knew I was in Hoboken, knew I had a podcast about entrepreneurs, and said, hey, Karim's going to... She didn't say hey like that. But, hey, Karim is going to be at King's, the grocery store in Hoboken, which is actually the first store that Yaza sold into. For an in-store demo, would love for you to come by. And that's actually, we came and met in person. So really, really cool there. But, you're in many stores now, especially around the New York area, and you're expanding beyond that as well. How have you started to, already get this early momentum with retailers in Yaza?
So before I jump into that, I want to shout out to Brooke, our PR person. She's really amazing. I really like her. That event where I met you in Hoboken, it was a demo, and we wanted to give back. Like you said, that King's Food Market was our first store we sold, and I am someone who believes in giving back to the community. So I was there. We're giving T-shirts away, some gift cards as well. It was kind of a fun event, but it was also good for us to have direct interaction with the consumer, understanding their feedback. It's always important to understand what they want, what they like, what's their reaction. And I try to be present in as many demos as possible. And we try to do as many demos as possible because the biggest challenge we will face is people buying it off the shelf. Now that we have it on the shelf, as you said, taking it off the shelf. And we've seen that when people try it, they're loving it. So as soon as people are trying it, the first thing they do is buy it. The hardest part is to get it in people's mouth, people to try it. So these demos are a great way to do that. Now, I believe in building a team. We have a really good sales team, a really strong sales force that we're able to get the product on the shelf. We have a really good marketing team, social media, working with so many influencers, but also kind of passing on the message about Labneh. And we've had really, really good sales. Our product's been flying off the shelf very quickly. Our biggest challenge now is stores are running out very quickly, which is a good problem to have. And we're really happy with how the consumers have reacted to our product launch.
That's a really interesting point you bring up about the demos. Of course, they're a really effective tool for getting people to actually try the product. Because, had we not met, I'm probably in that category. I think I've heard of Labneh before, but I didn't know too much about it. And if I just saw it on a shelf, I don't know if I would go for it. But once I tasted it, I was like, oh my God. Like Dana's already like, all right, we got to get more, Max. But in addition to demos, what are some other ways that you're starting to tackle this like huge roadblock of needing to educate consumers?
So we're using social media. That's a new way of reaching the consumer. Everyone's on social media these days. We're working on that. We're also build some recipes. We're launching a recipe page by the end of the month where we're showing the consumer how to use Labneh if they decide to be creative, kind of, some ideas on how to use Labneh. It's going to be challenging. We understand that, but that's part of it. And no one's been able to tackle that space yet. So we're very excited to be there. We've grown really fast already. We're already in 17 states in a month of being in the market. We were at a trade show last week and we had a lot of people walking to us be like, we've seen you on social media. So that social media campaign is really doing good. And they've come, tried the product. It was like a demo. We fed around 4 or 5,000 people in 3 days. It was crazy the amount of people that were at the booth, the amount of people that loved it. We ran out of Labneh on the last day because people were just taking tubs away. They loved it. We're not in Philadelphia yet, so everyone living in Philly would just take a tub and go away with it. So we're really happy about that.
What's your ideal type of store to be into?
Before going to store, we want to be in every American household table. That's the objective. It doesn't matter what social level you are at. We want to be on your table. We want you to eat Labneh. So Labneh is such a versatile product that not only you can use it as a dip or spread or cook with it. I make Labneh with pasta. We had someone did the beet Labneh pasta, like a Barbie themed Labneh last week. There's so much you can do with Labneh. But at the same time, we also feel that Labneh can eventually replace some of the cream cheese consumer, either on the bagel or on the sandwich. It could also replace sour cream because Labneh is much healthier, much better for our kids. We want to be in every American household.
Looking back already at, which really is just the start, like first at bat, first pitch of your journey. What has been the biggest driver in the early success and early, distribution wins for Yaza?
So we've had the community. So people that either from Lebanon or people who know what Labneh is. And we realized that number of people is growing, that percentage is growing really fast because people are looking for Mediterranean diets, for healthier diets, especially after COVID, after the pandemic, people care about what they eat. Our plain Labneh is made out of only 2 ingredients. It's milk and salt. That's it. There's nothing else in it. It's very clean. The American consumer is used to drinking milk and eating, dairy products and salt. It's nothing foreign to them. So we've seen that once they realize that our product has no kind of chemicals or powders or thickeners or preservatives, and it's just very clean product, a lot of people are picking up the product. That's for the plain. We've seen that on the za'atar. Some people call it the olive oil flavor because they're familiar with olive oil. People that are familiar with za'atar call it za'atar flavor. Spicy chili, we've seen that people who like spicy, they're loving it. that's a go-to. We've had stores that only sell spicy chili. So it's kind of there's something for everyone out there, and we don't have a number one. Obviously, our za'atar flavor, it's our best seller, but it's not too far. The other two are kind of, it's like 40, 30, 30. It's not that far from each other.
If your mind would enjoy the flavors of podcasting tips, entrepreneurship tips, puns that make you shake your head and roll your eyes, then you will love what we're whipping up with the Podcasting to the Max newsletter. You can sign up at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter, and that comes to you short and sweet, or short and sweetly, I don't know, every Thursday. Now, for another rendition of the worst segue you've ever heard. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go from dairy and salt to inspiration and creativity, which was a terrible segue there. But I would love to hear more, Karim, about you on the personal side and really how you're operating at the time of this recording as an entrepreneur and as a business leader. So we've alluded to it, and I know from just what we talked about in person too that you're traveling around a lot right now. You're going to different demos, you're going to different trade shows, meeting with different retailers. Go, and obviously it's been a big driver, you and team doing that in order to see this early momentum. How are you, I guess, making some time for family and personal life to make sure that you don't burn out in this early phase of Yaza?
So for me, family is very important. I have two kids, two boys, one 7-year-old, and I have a almost 2-year-old son. It's very hard to balance, especially for a startup, especially at the beginning. I work all day. Sometimes I work at night. I work every weekend, but I am 100% committed wherever I am. So if I'm home, I switch work away. I give 100% commitment to my family. When I'm at work, I switch everything away. I give 100%. And thanks to my wife, Karma, who's been very supportive and very helpful. She kind of took over part of the role at home when I'm not there in my absence. This Friday I have a work trip to DC. I'm taking my son with me. He's gonna miss school. He's coming with me. That's how I want to kind of balance.
We won't tell his teachers.
Well, I did. I actually emailed the teachers. I told them, I think that's a good part of education. I used to travel to Nigeria, visit my dad at work, and you learn a lot. And that's, he's my biggest inspiration. I learned so much from him, how he started from nothing and what he was able to achieve. So for me, I want my son, he looks up to me. Every time he has a show and tell at school, he talks about Yaza. He brings in sales sheet and banners and products. He wears a Yaza t-shirt. So I think it's important for him to kind of go. We have a demo in DC. He's going to be with me. We have a few other meetings set. He's going to come. He's going to have his iPad on the side, but he's going to kind of see his dad in action, which I think is very important for a child, but it's also a good time for me and him to bond because I haven't had the chance in the last few months to spend a lot of time with him.
There's a couple parts there that I want to dig into further. The first part is you mentioned how when you're at home and you're, quote unquote, off the clock, you're totally committed to family and you're able to switch work off. What, I guess, mechanisms or tactics do you use to make sure that you're totally focused on family and not being pulled away to email every few seconds at home?
So I put my phone on silent. I put it on the charger in the bedroom. I put my phone away. Obviously not in working hours, so there's nothing usually urgent. And I kind of plan that when I know there's nothing urgent. So if we don't have a production going on or if we don't have any big event coming on, this is what I do. I also like to take my family out to restaurants. We love eating out. We love trying different cuisines. Also at restaurants, we have a rule with the family, my wife and myself, where phones away. One for the kids, so the kids don't have distractions and they kind of have the conversation and talk about their days or talk about their week. But at the same time, for us to kind of enjoy time together. I think that's very important.
People talk about the glow you get when it's like a great meal with family or the people you love, or even an awesome dinner party with friends. When you keep that phone away and just focus on the conversation and spending time together, it's one of the best feelings that you can have. It's great that you keep that attention on that. The other element that I would love to dive into more is about your father. And so, you've mentioned that, he's the biggest inspiration ever to you and just an incredible life, an incredible entrepreneurial story in himself. We'll start with entrepreneurship. What was the best entrepreneurship lesson that he taught you?
He told me to follow my gut and to follow my dreams. When he started his business, he had almost nothing. And he started from his the trunk of his car, and he told me, the most important thing for you is to just believe in yourself, work hard, it will pay off. That's a very big learning for everyone. Nothing is impossible. If you work for it, if you work hard for it, if you take risks, you can't just sit there and hope and say, "Oh, I wish this happened. I wish I did this. I wish I did that." Nothing's going to happen for you. I had to leave a country where my apartment was destroyed. I was in my comfort zone, in my family, my entourage, my community. I left to a new country where I knew almost nobody. I wanted to start a business where I knew almost nothing about it. It was COVID. Everything was shut down. No one wanted to talk to anyone because, it's COVID. It's hard to make new friends, hard to meet people. And I was able to be where I am today because of that inspiration, because of that message. And I speak to my father every morning and every afternoon. So every morning when I wake up, the first person I call is him. Every afternoon around 5 p.m., because that's when it's bedtime back in Lebanon, I speak to him, kind of give him updates on my day. He's the motivation. He's always behind me. He always pushes me and gives me all that motivation.
What about on the personal side, or just like, role model side? What has he shared with you that's helped shape you? Just be the best human you can be.
So my father is, he's used to be a judge, so he's very fair. So he helped me. He, kind of taught me that how to be fair with people, how to be honest, how to be straightforward, and that's something that's very hard to find these days. Find people that way. At the same time, he's the most generous and giving person. So he's kind of gave me that. And in life, I believe that the more you give, the more you receive. And it's always about, forget about thinking about receiving. Just, do your part, give, and good things will come to you.
And I love the what you hinted at before of, your market research and creative research is actually eating and trying out different restaurants and finding inspiration from many different restaurants out there. What has been some of your favorite types of cuisines or style of restaurants that you frequent since coming to the US?
Obviously, Lebanese restaurants. I kind of, when I travel to every city, I want to go and try their Lebanese restaurants and see what they have. But other than Lebanese, I love Italian food. I'm a pasta freak. I love eating pasta. I love eating pizza.
I like that term, pasta freak. That's a new one.
And I love making pasta at home and be creative with different recipes.
You mentioned Lebanese restaurants. Have you ever been to Delray Beach, Florida, by any
I
chance?
have, and I love the restaurant. I love the food there.
Yeah, Amar, I think it's called. I think it's called
Yes.
Amar. Oh, small world.
And I met the owner. Nikolai is a very nice guy, very knowledgeable. He knows what he's doing. I really like the concept.
Oh, that's amazing. Shout out Gary and Cheryl, my wife's parents who live down there. Yeah, we've been there, and I think that was the first time I ever had Labneh. Labneh, probably, was there. I was like, I knew it sounded familiar, but just an absolutely delicious restaurant. So I don't know. There's got to be a future Yaza partnership brewing with some incredible Lebanese restaurants as well.
So we do have a few restaurants that have already, are starting to buy our Labneh to replace their Labneh in their cuisines. And what we've realized, a lot of restaurants make their own Labneh because what's in the market is not good enough for them. They don't believe that that's what they want to give their consumers. I think their consumers deserves better. And when they've tried our Labneh, which is made similarly to how they do it in the kitchen, it saves them time and labors. We're in discussions with a few restaurants actually around the country to switch from making their own Labneh to Yaza Labneh.
Saving labor with Labneh. It's got a ring to it, an alliterative ring to it. Speaking of unusual comments, because I can't resist, let's get to the unusual. So doesn't have to tie to your business at all. This is just weird talents, quirks, pet peeves. Just learn a little bit more about your personality. So I call them weird talents. Some people call them party tricks. What's like a skill you have, maybe a memory trick, something that you're good at, but it doesn't impact your business really?
I'm very organized. I'm too organized. I kind of sometimes annoy my wife where I have an Excel file. My Excel file goes to next April, where I have my breakfast, lunch, dinner planned. I have every meeting planned on that Excel file. I like everything to be perfect, and sometimes it's too much. I'm kind of that's kind of a freak, I would say.
You mean literally every meal, like every food that's in every meal you have laid out in advance?
Yes, and then I would walk out in the grocery store. If the product is not perfectly organized, I cannot look at it, stare at it, and not do something about it. So everywhere I go is kind of annoying. If I have it, if this chair is wrong or there's a shoe upside down, I have to turn it and put it flat. It's kind of how I am, and sometimes it's not. It's too much.
Hey, I'm the same way about fixing something, or like if a picture frame is slightly angled or something like that. So hey, if you need me out on the ground at Kings or any of the stores that you're in, and if I see the label turned sideways, I'll make sure to fix it for you. How about pet peeves or things that you just find a little bit annoying? This could literally be about anything, but what's something that kind of ticks you off a bit?
One time I was on the plane, and this lady's shoe was upside down. She took off her shoes to kind of be comfortable, and I kind of went because I couldn't stare at it. I just couldn't take it. I went and flipped the shoe off, and she looked at me in a very it was a very awkward moment. It was very funny. She looked at me in a very like with an angry face, thinking I was trying to steal her shoe or something.
Oh my god, that's awesome. I'll remember to keep my shoe. No, I always keep my shoes on actually. How about quirks? What's something a little quirky about your personality that maybe your kids, your wife's team, somebody calls you out for?
So I can't fall asleep if the TV is not on. I always have to have something on loud, either TV or the phone. And I just don't fall asleep if I'm not watching anything or listening to anything. Another thing is, I sometimes in the winter I have the heater on, and I would have the ACs on all year long. Doesn't matter how hot or cold it is outside. I always need cold air, and then in the winter I have both turned on at the same time.
Awesome. That's shout out my dad's good friend growing up, the Bob Schnatter, they called it, who would always drive his convertible, but keep the AC on while he drives convertible. So that it's two forms there. So it kind of makes me think of that. But let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Yes.
All right, let's get wild. What is a tip you can share about learning multiple languages? Because you've told me before that you actually know three languages, or at least three languages, but English is your third language.
Correct. So English is my third language. The biggest tip I would give families out there is start young. Young kids have they're a sponge. So my little boy already speaks three languages at home, and then he's learning Spanish at school. So he's even better than me. And that's the biggest tip. Just start young. The younger you start, the easier it is.
And what are those three languages that you speak?
I speak French. I was born in Geneva, raised in Paris. So I speak French. I speak also Arabic from being from Lebanon. My parents used to speak to me Arabic, and English being my third language. I did study Spanish at school, but I wasn't really good at it.
Más o menos. Which of those three languages was the most difficult to learn?
Arabic, because I was born in Geneva, in the French side of Switzerland. I lived in Paris, so French obviously was so easy. We used to learn English at school. Arabic was only spoken at home with my parents, and we used to get a teacher coming in, teaching us how to write and read. And Arabic is really, really difficult. The letters, it's from right to left. It's not from left to right. It's more complicated. So it's very, very tough to learn. But because I learned it early, and that's what I did with my son, he started even before. He started when he was 3 years old, kind of learning Arabic. And he speaks better Arabic than even people in Lebanon.
It's like Hebrew with the right to left as well. Yeah, it's a game changer when you're changed in the direction. How about you? So you've lived multiple places in Europe as well as the Middle East as well as Africa. So basically, you've been all around the Med from from every angle. What is the most beautiful place that you've ever seen with your bare eyes?
Switzerland, the mountains in Switzerland. So we spend a lot of time. We used to go with my parents. They loved, living in Geneva. We had the opportunity to drive to a lot of places, and the mountains of Switzerland. The lake just below the mountain is beautiful, and for me, that's the most beautiful country in the world.
Yeah, it's definitely on the bucket list. And I saw that you went to school in London as well. What's your favorite memory from studying/living in London?
So I'm a big soccer fan. I support a team out of London called Arsenal.
Yeah, of course.
I'm a season ticket holder. I have two season tickets, one for myself and one for my older boy Kayan, and I try to go as much as I can. So I chose London because of Arsenal. I went to college there because of my love to Arsenal. So my biggest memory is going all to all the games, and I used to travel a lot with the away fans, which is a beautiful experience. So from London, we would travel on a plane with full of Arsenal fans, singing all the time. Going to Rome, playing against the team in Rome, and then coming back. Like these are the best memories I had.
If Arsenal could be an all-star team where it was you could clone one player and it'd be 11 of the same player, any Arsenal player in history, who would that player be? That would give you the best chance.
Henry. Thierry Henry is my idol growing up, my favorite player ever. Number 14, he's the best, in my opinion, the best striker that ever played in the Premier League. I love him. I love, even till now, he's now a coach. I always follow him. I watch him. He's on American TV on CBS, Paramount Plus. He does a lot of the punditry for the Champions League, and I love, just watching him, listening to him. And I had a chance to meet him a few times in London while going to games.
And then last one, what is your personal favorite way to consume Yaza?
I love Labneh. I eat the plain with a spoon. It's just so tasteful. So the plain itself on its own, I know we say you can't, you have to add things to it, but I can eat it on its own. I'm just used to the flavor. I love it just out of the tub. So I get a spoon, I eat out of the tub. It's very healthy, very good for me, and it has a lot of protein, which is something I'm trying to get into this new lifestyle of healthier, better for you, good for you, a good probiotics as well for my gut health. I love that. So that's my go-to.
Just like your father says, follow your gut. So it's all about the gut. Come full circle here. Karim, thank you so much. This has been an absolute blast. It was really cool, in recent weeks, meeting in person. Don't usually get to do that before, interviews, since so many are remote these days. So really, really cool, and just a blast learning the Yaza story from you today. Where is the best place for people to try out Yaza?
Depending on where you live, just you can go on our website. There's a store locator. We're adding stores by the day, so we're around 150 stores now, but we're adding a store a day, and we have a few retailers, big ones nationwide, coming out soon. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on our website. We may not be in your area now, but we will be soon. So make sure that you follow us for more information. Social media is also a good place. Our Instagram is yaza.foods, where we always update the new news coming out, new things, new products, new stores. So keep an eye on that as well.
Perfect. And the website you mentioned is yazafoods.com. So exactly spelled as it sounds, Yaza foods. But last thing, final thoughts. Stage is yours. It could be just kind of words to live by, or even a favorite Yaza recipe that people should consider. Whatever you want, take us home here.
So I wanted to share a story, actually, that something that happened to me back in November 2019. I was visiting the US. It was Thanksgiving, and it was my first time being in the US for Thanksgiving. I had read about it, seen it on in different movies, on TV, but I never experienced it. So I was here on a business trip on my own. I didn't know many people. I was staying in a hotel, and the hotel staff, because this is where I used to kind of have my meals, they asked me, "What's your plan for Thanksgiving?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm just gonna grab a bite, somewhere in town." They looked at me, started laughing, and they said, "Restaurants are closed." And one, the concierge of the hotel invited me to his house for Thanksgiving. And initially, I was kind of, shocked and surprised. It's something that someone I barely knew, I had met a few times. I asked around. They told me, "You're not going to find any restaurants open." I went to this person's house. It was beautiful. He had his family there, his kids, but he also had his friends. And the whole Thanksgiving, how it was, people from different culture backgrounds sharing food on a table, inspired me a lot, to come to the US and open a food business and bring food that is not common in the US, bring it to the American table. That was kind of a big inspiration for me. It was a big driver. I also want to add, when we moved here as a family, we didn't know many people. I was surprised how the family values in the US are so high, and how family is so important, how people come together and people accept each other. There's so much said about diversity and etc. But I've lived all around the world, as you know. And the US is where I felt the most home, where people from that don't know anything about me ask questions, want to understand you more, want to understand your culture. And those kind of things, those kind of experiences are what pushed me to start this business.
Well said, and a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much, Kareem, for sharing your Yaza story, sharing all your insights and tips and lessons. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite podcast app and tell a friend about the podcast. That is how we grow the show. And that I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Sometimes I can get through a sentence without throwing a rhyme or like corny thing in there, but sometimes not. You can also find us on Good Pods, where there are really, really good podcasts and podcast recommendations and people. And for any help with podcast production, you can learn more at maxpodcasting.com and sign up for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter. That's at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!